Greater Sandton and beyond. Get ready for the Sandton Times Hour
with your host,
Alexander.
Ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond, welcome to the Sandton Times Hour, edition 173. It's week 36 of 2024, and as always, available on all leading digital audio channels. And if you'd like to get in touch, you can send through your questions, your comments, or your feedback on one of the preferred channels. If you want to email editor@sandtontimes.co.za, you can do so, or you can connect on social media at Sandton Times, or head on to the website, www.sandtontimes.co.za. And a very special welcome to everyone listening for the very first time, or if you've been listening regularly, a very special welcome to you too. If you're in Sandton or in Johannesburg or in Pretoria, across South Africa, anywhere else and everywhere else in the world, if you're online or on air, wherever you are, I'm happy to report that all is well in Sandton land, and it's great to have you join me one more time. And of course, Vincenzo joins me again as well behind the mixing desk, making sure we sound spiffy, great. What's the word now? Very mindful, very demure. But spring is upon us, and with the last bit of cold weather hitting us and hopefully moving on, it can only get warmer from here on in. And a quick look at the Sandton Times diary for the week. And if it's not in the diary, Vincenzo, does it even matter? You tell me. GAC Motor, they launched in Sandton this week with a new range of cars from China. And you can head onto our website and have a look at the article around that. And we're going to be seeing so many more car brands launching, especially from Asia, in the coming months. I can't even tell you. I don't even know who's going to buy all these cars. I've been debating this with so many other motoring journalists, and it's questionable. And it's a very particular segment that all of them seem to be launching into. So have you made the switch? Have you switched to one of these Asian brands? Are you still sticking with the tried and tested? I mean, their offering is quite incredible in terms of the pricing versus what you get. But many questions still out there in terms of resale value, quality, all these things. So it's going to be a very interesting time in the motoring space with all these brands launching into the market. The Nedbank hosted the Cape Winemakers Guild Showcase in Sandton with an array of wines and bites to eat. And there was a chance to taste some of the amazing wines, but also a silent auction to raise money for a very good cause. And it was very well attended. And we fought the cold, and the wine also helped. The Commerce Makers took place in Stain City as well, and the Festival of Motoring hit the track at Kyalami Race Circuit. Did you have a chance to attend any of these? Did you go along? Were you more of a curated and crafted person, or were you more of somebody who likes a bit of high-octane adrenaline? Be good to hear from you if you went to one of them and what you thought. How did it go? Then Kolkakio launched a new menu in Sandton, and Under Armour hosted Olympic swimmer Tatiana Smith at their flagship store in Sandton City. And I suspect that as the temperatures start getting warmer, we're going to be seeing more and more events unfolding in our calendar as it's the last rush, and then it's December, and then 2024 is over. Unthinkable, but that's the truth. And then, of course, we had the Paralympics that kicked off, and I got sucked into a showdown of boccia. Is it pronounced boccia? Boccia? Fascinating. These ramps, and then they sort of roll a ball down there, and it reminds me of curling without the ice. But I was watching a lot of that, and then, of course, over the weekend, we had a chance to see the Springboks in action against the All Blacks, and what a game that was. So who are we talking to in the next hour? What is up on the show this week? Well, in a bit, I'll be catching up with an entrepreneur and author who has released a new book that serves up a step-by-step guide on starting a business in South Africa. Or if you have a current business, how do you take that to the next level? Well, we're going to find out in just a minute. Then I'll be chatting to a local fashion designer that is taking African design to the world and is opening a store in Sandton as well. So stay listening for that. And finally, I'll be sharing an interview with a chef and MasterChef South Africa judge about his new lunch menu and his career to date. All this and more up in the next hour.
Show some love.
subscribe, share,
Leave a review and rating for the Sandton Times Hour.
on your favorite podcast app now.
Online, on air.
Anywhere, anytime.
This is the Sandton Times Hour.
Well, there's a new book out on the shelves called Side Hustles and Startups, a practical 10-step guide to starting a business in South Africa. And here to chat to me about this and so much more is Fred Roed. He's the CEO and founder of a business called Heavy Chef. So, Fred, it's good to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Well, Fred, let's talk about Heavy Chef first, because, I mean, you listen to the word Heavy Chef and you think, now, what has this got to do with business?
Yeah. We get that a lot. It's kind of like, it's a beautiful name, but it's also the road to beat our own back with, because ultimately, when we started the business back in the late teens, we wanted to come up with a name for a learning community for entrepreneurs that wasn't like the business school or the entrepreneur hub, or something that just, I mean it is good practice to have a label that says what's in the bottle, but in our case we wanted to be a bit creative. So the name Heavy Chef comes from the saying, never trust a skinny chef. And the idea behind that is that we want to celebrate the individuals that roll up their sleeves and they get stuck in. They solve the problems by getting involved and eating their own food. So the idea is that we have these courses online that you can go and check out at heavychef.com. They are based on a curriculum that focuses on technology, leadership, and creativity. And all of the courses that we have, we call them, instead of courses, we call them recipes. And then the tutors, we call them chefs. And those chefs are not just any person. They are the people that, that have done their 10,000 hours and they can speak with authority on all of these various topics. So we have about 3,000 learning videos, these recipes on our platform. And it's free to sign up. And we wanted to create a community of entrepreneurs.
And a community of people who are chefs and are in the kitchen cooking what is South African business. And Fred, do you find that there is something very unique about starting a business in South Africa? I'm assuming in this book, there's probably a couple of things that are probably quite universal in terms of if you went anywhere in the world, there's probably the usual stuff you have to do. But there's probably a couple of drizzles of something that makes it uniquely South African to start a business here.
First of all, Alex, I love the fact that you've already just got stuck into the nomenclature of the chefs. We do it all the time. Everything is like a pun on some kind of cooking analogy. Thank you for that, and we'll take it. I think it's a great question because South African business is unique, and let's just start out by talking about the challenge of starting a business in general. I mean, if you go to any country, anywhere in the world, it is really, really tough. It's brutal starting your own business, right? So when people, I get asked all the time, should I start a business? And like, what's the best advice for it? And I actually say to them, like, don't, because it's if you really want to freaking upturn your life, starting a business is the best way to do that, because it's absolutely relentless in terms of what you have to do. You don't just have one job. You got 7 jobs. You got to wear 7 hats. You got to be the person making the thing that you're selling, but you also got to be the brand guy, this marketing person, the HR person, the tea lady, the friggin' sales and marketing director. All of these people all smushed into one person. So it's really tough. In South Africa, you have this added ingredient that it's called the South African environment, which is fraught with things like load shedding and corruption and infrastructure and potholes and all kinds of inconsistencies that maybe a first world nation doesn't really have. So I think the one thing in terms of the unique drizzle would be that South Africans are amazing. I'm so blown away by how incredibly innovative, creative, and resourceful South African entrepreneurs are. And that would be my sort of blunt answer to that question. Obviously, there's a lot of nuances, idiosyncrasies to that on top of that.
Well, it's interesting that the book is also titled Side Hustles and Startups, because very often some of South Africa's great businesses and great brands started as something that was a side hustle, a side dish to the main course that people were looking after. And they decided to, cook something up in their kitchen, or, go to a flea market and start selling stuff. And suddenly they realized there's a market for it, or they found someone online who started buying it. And then suddenly this turned into a fully committed business.
a side hustle into a main hustle. And if you ever want a job as a copywriter, by the way, you're welcome to apply to Heavy Chef, because I'm loving just the free flow of cooking analogies that you're peppering this conversation with.
Fred, there's more coming. Fred, there's more coming. So just brace yourself.
I do not doubt it. So, I mean, I think with regards to, so one of the things that's just, I mean, I guess it's interesting for us is, when we started Heavy Chef, one of the big debates that we had between me and my co-founders was, should we set this up as a charity organization, because it would be easier to find funding for it and then to basically then serve this entrepreneur community. And we realized very quickly, like, hang on, there would be a little bit of a trap, because ultimately, if we're starting a business that serves entrepreneurs and teaching entrepreneurs how to be better entrepreneurs, and we're not entrepreneurs ourselves, then we're skinny chefs. So we kind of realized that we had to create Heavy Chef as a business, right? But on the side of it, we did register an NPC, a non-profit company, which essentially we made it into our research arm. And alongside all of the work that we do with this incredible community, we study the data, and we get a lot of data back from all of the businesses that within our community, which is about 50,000 strong. And one of the biggest insights that we received is that, people are working in isolation, largely in isolation. So, you hear all of these statistics that come out of the census and whatnot, that there's, we have the largest unemployment rate in the world, right? We've got the largest youth unemployment in the rate. Some people have it as high as like 60%. The unemployment rate is north of 30%, which is staggering, right? So what we've noticed in the research that we've done is that many of those individuals that are deemed unemployed are actually, they're transacting, they're creating, they're interacting with other people, with their products, and they're selling business, i.e. they're entrepreneurial. They're just flying under the radar. So, I mean, that's obviously quite jarring and staggering, because they need to be helped and they need to be served. But at the same time, there's a glimmer of hope for the economy, because if we can start to get those people regulated and, give them access to more finance, the ability to scale, those side hustles, those, the people who are on the ground, on the street corners, they're not just sitting and staring at each other chewing gum. They're hustling. And so part of the reason for this book is to create a guide for people who are starting a business, who may not have, the education that, say, like an MBA or some business science person would have. They would be able to use this as essentially a recipe for starting and scaling their businesses.
Well, I'm chatting to Fred Roed. He is the CEO of an organization called Heavy Chef, and we're talking about a book titled Side Hustles and Startups that he's just released. We're going to take a quick break, and more about business in this conversation straight after the break.
The best of Sandton and beyond.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
I'm picking up my chat with Fred Roed, who is the CEO and founder of Heavy Chef, chatting all things business in South Africa. And Fred, you've really given us a really good insight into kind of where we're at in terms of business in South Africa and how important it is for people to start businesses in the country, because the unemployment isn't looking great in terms of youth, in terms of the general public. So it's really important to have people take part in the economy. And like you said, there's a lot of people who are already active in the economy, but it's all very unstructured, and they also don't know what they don't know. So that also makes it very difficult to try and run a business. Fred, I'm assuming some of these things, if not all of them, are part of the motivation to put a book like this together, because I'm assuming, based on the feedback you got from your community, there were a lot of people saying, yeah, I'm keen to do this, but I don't really know where to start or what to do, or I'm stuck at this point and I don't know how to take it to the next level.
I mean, your point around speaking to the community is an important one, because before we dove straight into this book, we actually spoke to many of our community members through the Heavy Chef Foundation, the non-profit arm of Heavy Chef. And we asked them, like, where are you struggling? What are the things that you're really battling with? One of the biggest insights that we had was that, as I mentioned, people are working in isolation. And if you look at what, in terms of at least the registered businesses in South Africa are struggling with. We noticed that there's an interesting imbalance in that 92% of registered businesses in South Africa have less than 10 people, right? And of those, it's like 68%, it's like 67.9% or something, but 68% of those businesses are solopreneurs. Right. That means that these individuals are working on their own, and they're trying to do, as I mentioned, all these, these 7 roles that an entrepreneur has to do, and they don't have the support that they need. So ultimately, look, we wanted to create a book that gave them the basics, to give them recipes. And as you know, with any recipe, you follow the rules, you basically come up with some kind of a dish, right? So that's the idea behind a recipe guidebook, is that we wanted to make it as super simple as possible for our community members to follow these instructions, and therefore come up with something that would start making the money and supporting themselves. But the ultimate aim of our community is to get them engaging with each other, so that they can then foster connections, support with each other, emotionally support each other, because that's also hugely important, to be able to build teams, build networks, to be able to gather referrals, and obviously grow their businesses to something that will impact our economy in a positive way.
In all the steps that you've listed in this book, which one do you find is the one that normally breaks the camel's back? Where do people normally get stuck and they just can't move to that next step?
People generally get stuck when it comes to cash flow. I mean, it's one of the biggest problems and challenges that entrepreneurs face. So, let's just take an example. If you're a small business, and 90% of Heavy Chef's community are sub 5 million rand per year businesses, right, or entities. And so when you start making a little bit of money, one of the biggest traps that you fall into is managing the cash flow. So in other words, the inflow and the outflow of whatever money that's being transacted. So, whatever money you're invoicing and whatever money you're spending in order to run your business. So the challenge with that is, when you are a solopreneur, if you're a small business, if you've got 5 people in your team, or if you've got 1 or 2 subcontractors that help you to deliver your service or your product, it's really tricky to make sure that you have enough money to pay people at the right time in order for you to start growing your business. Because it's impossible to just flatline your business. You have to grow in order to be successful. So this idea of managing your money is, as you say, the straw that breaks every camel's back. We all run into that challenge. So if you can learn some of the basic principles around managing your money, then you're 32 steps ahead of the rest of the pack.
And I suppose that also works hand in hand with setting up systems, because I also find that a lot of people are doing a lot of things, but nothing has a system. It's sort of like whatever comes at you at whatever given time, that's what gets priority.
For sure. We call internally at Heavy Chef, within our own team, because we're a small team. We only have 5 full-time employees at Heavy Chef. We've got about 13, maybe 14 subcontractors, people who work part-time. And then we have a community of, supporters and volunteers and community ambassadors and so on in various regions around the country. So the systems are absolutely important. We call it our rails. So we create the rails, which are basically ways to manage the repeatable bits of the business. The parts that enable us to, almost like brushing your teeth, you don't have to think about it. So once you've got those systems in place, you can then repeat them and you can scale.
If you had to recommend this book to anybody, is this just for people who are starting off, who are nowhere at the moment, or is this also something for someone who's already come quite far down the line and might need to fill in some gaps, maybe spice up what they currently have, and maybe sort of just create a little bit more sort of like flavor in what they're doing?
Once again, your copywriting career is calling. So Alex, it's definitely aimed at the nascent entrepreneurs, so people who are just starting out. But it is most certainly something that a person who's already on the path and who's growing their business would do well to read, because there's a lot of basic information, basic lessons, basic learnings that are absolutely crucial for individuals to understand. And I'll hold up my hand and say, I'm what someone would call a creative entrepreneur. So my skill set in terms of personally is more on the sort of creative selling, networking, the marketing side of, I suppose, what, the suite of skills that would be available to entrepreneurs. I'm not strong on the admin, finance, tax, regulatory, administrative stuff, And so I think with that in mind, this is the kind of book that for somebody like me, I would have liked to have had when I started my first business, and to be able to brush up on some of the terms, like what's the difference between a debtor and a creditor, and essentially what's a balance sheet and an income statement, and those basic terms that you actually just have to know, because that's the kind of thing that's included in a book like Side Hustles and Startups.
Well, there you have it. Side Hustles and Startups, a practical 10-step guide to starting a business in South Africa. And if that whets your appetite, we're going to put more information up on the Sandton Times as well. So you can also go check out the links and get some more information on that. Fred Roed, CEO and founder of Heavy Chef. And if that's something also that appeals to you, go check out the Heavy Chef community as well. It might be helping you in your journey as a chef or as a entrepreneur, more likely in the coming
to cook up your business.
That's right, correct. Yeah. Cook up the business, but not the books. On that note, Fred, it's been such a great time with you on the Sandton Times Hour.
That's beautiful. Cooking the book. Please don't cook the books. Yeah.
That's right.
That's amazing, Alex. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
And as we get into the second half of the Sandton Times Hour, don't forget that if you caught something intriguing during the show and missed the details, well, don't worry. You can head over to the sandtontimes.co.za. That's www.sandtontimes.co.za and explore the comprehensive show notes. So you can do some further reading, some further links, and more information on the people that we spoke to in the last hour. And also don't forget, you can connect with the Sandton Times on social media. So go to @Sandton Times on whatever your preferred social media platform is, and you can follow and connect and see all the exciting things that get posted on a regular basis. Well, as we get into our next interview, I'm thrilled to be talking all things Africa and all things fashion. And I'm going to be joined on the line now by Gracia Bampile. She is the founder of Haute Afrika. And Gracia, it's good to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be interviewed by you.
Well, Gracia, it's good to have you on. You are in Greater Sandton, but we're going to get into all those details in just a minute. Tell us a little bit more about Haute Afrika. What is Haute Afrika all about?
Haute Afrika is an African print brand. When I started the brand, I wanted to emphasize the beauty of African culture and just African creativity on a high scale, international level.
Amazing.
So when I say Haute Afrika is an African print brand, I'm actually not even selling clothes. I'm selling Africa.
Well, I had a look at some of your work, and for those people listening, obviously it being mostly an audio platform, we're going to put up some of the images up on the website. So don't stress, you can go onto the website at a later stage and have a look at some of the amazing creations by Haute Afrika. But let's quickly rewind the clock a bit now to when you were 10 years old, because I believe that you had a very clear idea as to what you wanted to do in life from a very young age.
Yes, it was a pivotal moment for me. It was my birthday. I remember my 10th birthday, and my mom had gifted me a dress, and I refused to wear that dress. I refused to have my birthday party. The guests had already arrived. Everyone was waiting for me to come out. I said, no, I am not celebrating my birthday looking like that. So she had to take me out, take me shopping, then come back. And the guests had to wait for me. So for me, it was more important on how I showed up than the actual birthday itself. From then, I knew that fashion was important to me.
Did you have a clear sense of that you almost had like a bit of an eye for what looked good, what went well together?
Definitely, because everyone was so surprised, because your 10-year-old, you just give them what to wear and they don't have to sit there and argue and will not refuse to wear what you've offered them. And I was like, nope, that does not match my sense of style. I am not showing up like that. So I knew subconsciously, definitely, I had an eye, but then I didn't know how to articulate what it was about the dress that was unwilling to wear.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I also found very interesting about your story is that you also spent quite a bit of time at the United Nations. You've got a degree in international relations, and you decided to kind of just put that aside and go into an industry where a lot of people would say, "Wow, this is a highly high risk."
Yes, it was very high risk. I worked at the United Nations for I think possibly 3 years. And I love my job. I love the organization. And but I always felt like fashion is really where I belong. I always felt like fashion is where I belonged. And I remember having a meeting with my then boss or my supervisor, and telling them like, okay, I really love my job. And they were like, what are you still doing here? You should go. You should go. So they literally was like, listen, I am rooting for you if you want to go, because I want you to live your dreams. I loved the humanitarian side of the United Nations, and that's really also something I am. I'm a very big humanitarian. So it was perfect. It was amazing.
Well, subsequently, your pieces have featured in all kinds of media around the world. And I mean, that must be a great nod and a great acknowledgement towards the decision that you did make.
Yes, I am very grateful for those opportunities. I am absolutely shocked sometimes when I get emails and requests. I'm like, oh, are you sure? When Vogue reached out, when BBC, I was like, wait, how did you guys know about the brand? So it's definitely something that I'm very grateful for.
Amazing. Well, fast forward to the early 2020s and an interesting time to kind of start getting a fashion business going. And it must have been quite difficult to really get a fashion brand off the ground when everyone's sitting at home in their pajamas.
Yes, it was definitely difficult, and even more so difficult in an African print sub-market. So it's already difficult to break into fashion as a whole, and then to come in with a niche of, I'm only going to sell you African-related products was even harder, because then you have to go to market and teach people what is the fabric about, what is African fashion. Till today, I get people who don't even know that African fashion exists, or have no idea what the fabrics mean, or they think it's just for weddings and occasions.
And are you finding that resistance is coming from Africans themselves, as in South Africans and obviously the rest of the continent? And also, are you finding that people who are from overseas, people who are coming, who have nothing to do with Africa as such, I mean, they're just visiting, that they are embracing it much more than we are?
Definitely. Probably 40% of my clientele is overseas. And that is very interesting. Even when they come to my shop, which, by the way, I'm opening a shop in Sandton City.
Oh, wow.
Very soon. Even in the store, you'll find like tourists are more like eager to get the stuff, and they won't ask any, they will just get them because they want to live with a piece of Africa with them. But then when it comes to locals, you have to like engage, and you have to really convince for some people. And then you also have the proudly African, audience who really just want to wear African fabrics and African print for any occasion. So there's definitely three categories, but in terms of resistance, there is more resistance within Africa than there actually is outside of Africa.
Well, I must say your designs and your cuts are very appealing. It has a very international feel to it, whilst also still staying very true to sort of its African origins. And it's, it's something where you can say, wow, you look at it and you go, I can see that at a high-end event, or I can see that at a social gathering. Sometimes with fashion, you look at things and you go, gee, I don't know when I'm ever going to wear that, or if they'd even let me into the room if I wore that. But you clearly have a very unique design, which is also very true to Africa, but also has a very broad appeal.
Thank you so much. That's true. It was definitely intentional, because the aim of the brand is to go international. So I had to incorporate international elements, but still stay true and to our African roots.
I mean, I've done quite a bit of traveling this year, and I keep mentioning this, and I think people listening must be thinking, yes, this guy, if he talks one more time about travel, I'm going to throw him out the window. But one of the things I did realize is I always see a lot of African-inspired print, African-inspired design all over the world. And I keep looking at it and I'm going, but that's our stuff. Those are our zebra prints, and those are our giraffe designs, and that's our African prints. And, back home, it almost feels like it's not as treasured as it is in places in Europe, in the Middle East, in the Far East, where people really sort of make a big thing of it. And we're even seeing some of the top luxury designers now tapping into what is our cultural heritage, essentially.
Mhm. That's the sad reality. We don't value what we have. It's a sad reality. It is true. Even when I travel, I also see people are more embrace African prints easier. I think also because of access to market is easier here. So people don't really have that, I would assume.
You've stayed the course in terms of fashion and in terms of your vision as to what you want to do with Haute Afrika. What do you think you've learned about building a successful brand in the African context and in the South African context?
Oof, I have learned patience, patience, patience.
Yeah.
You can never have enough of patience. I have learned resilience. I have learned discipline. You know, to be an entrepreneur of any sort, you have to be disciplined. And you have to wait and wait and wait for your moment. And that could even be at any stage. Patience is always needed.
Yeah.
When you're starting out, when you're established, there's always ways to get bigger and bigger, and that requires patience.
I was listening to an interview with the new Minister of Arts and Culture and Sport, Gayton McKenzie, and once again there was another sort of reminder of how important the arts, the creative industry is to the South African economy. And what do you believe things like fashion invest into the economy, and how important is fashion to the South African economy?
I believe fashion is like food, because you can't go out of your house without wearing clothes. I mean, to an important event.
Preferably, yes.
Literally, you really can, preferably. But for the most part, you have to wear something. You can't go to an event without being fashionably or, wanting to look good. Everyone wants to look good. So because everybody wants to look good, everybody wants to invest in how they look. And that makes fashion a very important factor, because if the economy is if fashion is not supported by the economy, also the amount of jobs that are in the fashion industry is a lot.
Yeah.
So we definitely need support in terms of maintaining structures, and also on the legal side, avoiding, for example, my stuff is being listed in Shein, which is all the way in China without my consent, because there's no fashion laws to protect me. So they will go onto my website and then copy and then just sell for like 100 rands, something that I can't even make for 100 rands. It's important that we are supported both legally and economically.
As you grow this brand now, how do you go about finding your inspiration, finding the next great cut, the next great piece that you can sell to your customers?
That is my constant anxiety. Every single day I wake up and I'm like, ooh, what do I create today? How do I improve? How do I get better? How do I present a better collection? For me, I don't have a particular formula to how my inspiration comes or how I create my garments. It has happened in the most absurd ways. I could be taking a walk. I'm like, oh, that tree is green and I love the leaves. Maybe I could make a dress that looks similar to this. Or I've just had like an idea. But yeah, that is a constant, I would say my constant anxiety is being more creative every single day.
Amazing. Well, Gracia Bampile, when is that store in Sandton coming together?
We are opening it in October. I'm not sure of the date yet, but definitely should be between 10th and 15th October.
Well, we'll keep an eye out for it, and I'm sure we'll also get some more information once it's ready to open. Gracia Bampile, the founder of Haute Afrika. Go check out the website. We'll put some images up there for you to get some ideas, and it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thank you so much for having me.
The latest news,
The biggest names,
the best destinations.
the hottest entertainment. This is the Sandton Times Hour.
Well, Flames Johannesburg, located in the Four Seasons Hotel, the Westcliff, introduced a new 2-course lunch menu crafted by renowned chef Katlego Mlambo, who recently was also featured as one of the main judges on the 5th season of MasterChef South Africa. I had a chance to catch up with Chef Katlego at the hotel and kicked off our chat by asking him a bit more about his new lunch menu.
I mean, the lunch menu that have launched the Four Seasons, basically we want people to taste delicious food. It's something simple, but yet all the flavors tick the box and tantalize the taste buds.
So let's go into some of these dishes. What inspired the entire menu? Like, what was your thinking behind it? What did you want to bring into these dishes?
I mean, I think the most important thing is to showcase Mzansi and to showcase being proudly South African. And you know, when they say if it's not broken, don't fix it. And I was like, who doesn't like a good piece of meat with mashed potatoes? And the last thing someone wants to have during lunch is something complicated. So it's flavors that are very common, but flavors that are quite exciting to everybody.
So you've been here since January this year.
Yes.
What brought you to this point in your career? Maybe give us a bit of an insight as to what your journey has been up until now that you're at the Four Seasons.
I mean, my journey's been exciting. I was in London last year, and I think I missed home. And, you know, being Mzansi and being part of South African is what makes my heart skip a beat. And if I'm going to come back home, why not work at Four Seasons? It's a global footprint. And the fact that it's a new team, it's a new energy, we're trying to put the Four Seasons where it was and where it can go further. And I think that's the exciting part for me, is like to work for this company that's amazing and just tick all the boxes.
You've now got this great comparison now, having worked overseas. You said you wanted to come back to South Africa. This is where your heart is at. If you had to compare sort of South Africa to the rest of the world in terms of our food, in terms of our hospitality offering, how do we fare up? Like, what are your insider, outsider views on it?
Alex, I must say, oh my word, I mean, nothing beats South Africans. I think in terms of food, a lot of people ask me, what is South African cuisine? I'm like, I have no idea. And that's the exciting part. You've got your Afrikaans, you've got your Cape Malay, you've got your Zulu, you've got your Tswana. It's one poiki pot. And I think we are definitely top tier. We are up there with the greats.
Was there a specific dish that you missed while you were overseas that you sort of secretly cooked up in your own room?
Honestly speaking, nothing beats a good pub in place, eh? I mean, a good braai. I know people call it a barbecue, it's a barbie, but nothing beats a good braai. And I think for me on my off days, good pub, good chakalaka, and a couple of lamb chops. Those are the things that tantalize my taste buds.
You haven't just been busy in the kitchen at the Four Seasons in Johannesburg. You've also been busy on screen. A lot of people will recognize your face from the latest season of MasterChef. How did that experience come about? I mean,
Wow.
how did you get a chance to be judging that?
I mean, listen, the fact is Four Seasons have been so supportive, and I mean, when things are meant to be, things are meant to be. Last season, I was a guest judge, and the fact that this season I've been called to be one of the main judges, it's been something amazing. And I've always wanted to be a judge in MasterChef. I mean, from Australia to the one in the UK to America, it's also the show that has this amazing global footprint, and things just happen cohesively, and we are there.
Tell me, what's been some of your highlights of doing MasterChef South Africa? What's the experience been like? Obviously, we get to see the final product, but there must have been some very interesting moments behind the scenes as well.
I think for me, the highlights actually seeing guys from like the first day being in the top 20 right to the final two, and also me being inspired. You know, the fact that you've got these guys that have taken a chance to go take this gamble of being the next master chef. They've left their families, they've left their work, they've taken this gamble, and to see these amateur cooks create some amazing things, for me, has been plenty of highlights.
I'm suspecting that you might have found some inspiration in the MasterChef kitchen that you might be bringing back to the hotel, some interesting recipes or techniques?
Absolutely. I mean, not only have I found interesting recipes and techniques, but also inspiring my chefs. You know, the whole point is like, what kind of mentor I want to be, what kind of chef I want to be. And the fact that I've seen these amateur cooks inspire me, I want to take that fire and bring it back to my chefs and create something phenomenal.
Coming back to your new menu that you're now offering, your new lunch menu that'll be hopefully on for quite some time. It's on Monday to Friday, I understand correctly. What's some of your favorite dishes on that menu? If you had to say to someone, look, you know, come along, try this, what's the one that stands out for you?
Listen, for me, I must say I am a big fan of the aubergine dish. Because, you know, aubergines, eggplants, brinjal, it has the stigma. It's either you love it or you don't. But I think the way we treat it and the way we've manipulated this aubergine, it's got this meaty effect that any meat lover would dive into the dish 110%.
This is the one that you also serve, I think it's sort of like a sun-dried tomato.
Yes, sun-dried
sort of
tomato
paste.
romanesco. We've got a salsa verde for a bit of acidity. We've got a baba ganoush. And then we've taken the aubergine, pankoed it, deep fried. I mean, it's soft in the center and crunch in the outside. You can't go wrong.
You've also got a lot of development happening here at the hotel.
Yes.
Some new spaces opening up. I don't know if you can reveal too much as to what's happening there.
Listen, sharing is caring. So a lot of development. We're very excited, very nervous as well. So we've got a 400-seater ballroom that's working on the one side of the hotel. So think about it, 400 seats, top tier food. It's going to be probably the biggest, I think, in South Africa. stand to be corrected. And then the other side, we've got a deli. So think of a place where you can come grab something fresh, something delicious without being stuffy. So a lot of development happening and a lot of tasty food coming your way.
All right, that's coming sort of in 2025, I'm suspecting.
That's the plan, yes.
All right, fantastic. Well, Chef, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Thanks so much for making the time.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you very much.
That was Chef Katlego Mlambo at the Four Seasons Hotel, the Westcliff, and of course he's also a MasterChef South Africa judge, telling us a bit more about himself and his culinary creations. And with that, it's all we have time for this week on the Sandton Times Hour. And as always, I encourage you to head on to one of the popular podcast platforms and subscribe to the Sandton Times Hour on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Podcast Party, and so many more. You can also email editor@sandtontimes.co.za if you want to get in touch, or connect on social media @Sandton Times, and visit the website www.sandtontimes.co.za, and feel free to send through your questions, your comments, and your feedback. And of course, thank you to all my guests who made time to be on the show this week, and the teams that work relentlessly behind the scenes to make sure the Sandton Times keeps ticking over. Thank you for listening, and we'll do it all again next week.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening to the Sandton Times Hour. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to share it.